1. So for context, I am from rural Scandinavia. I'm a hunter. I'm 20 years old and I currently live with my family due to becoming very ill. And well, since moving, I have noticed the farm animals' behavior has changed alongside odd happenings. Here we're talking about horses, cats, and a dog, and, well, some now dead chickens. I'll start out explaining the horses' behavior. These are 2 castrated mustangs and a mare, all fair-tempered animals who are very friendly. Recently, they've been getting absolutely frightened by something. We've seen them staring into the woods, snorting, a fear and anxiety response, before blasting off galloping at high speeds, trying to flee and sometimes have fled their pasture. Inside the stables, they've also been suddenly snorting and standing in the corner of their enclosures. The cats have all been seeming awfully anxious. We have 2 barn cats. One is a mix of inside and outside cat, and the last one is an inside cat. The 2 outside cats are usually quite fond of people and are usually very comfortable in their environment, but ever since December last year, they've stayed in their room in the saddle room almost constantly. When they do leave, they seem to be on edge, and I've seen them posture up and hiss that, from what I could see, was nothing. Nothing but a creepy feeling, which may just be from listening to the cat. Now, the mixed cat usually does not go off as much, but will at times seem fearful, and will stick to us, which is quite odd. Since it isn't quite as people-friendly, the trouble for it and the inside cat have started to refuse to be downstairs at night, and sometimes they have hissed at something. The dog is a lovely golden retriever, who is the biggest, kindest goofball who usually just gets on people's nerves with his stealing and his strong belief in if it fits, I sits, usually on people, so he's not at all an ill-tempered dog or badly socialized. With him, it started with him sometimes staring for long amounts of time at the scullery where he usually sleeps. The scullery has a door into the stables and barn, and it would slowly progress to him barking and growling at the scullery. This continued along with him starting to do it at the living room and dining room. He has started growling at these small areas as well. All this kept on being a daytime thing up until early January. Then he would sometimes do it between 2 and 5 in the morning, with his barking and growling becoming more intense. He also stared at the same front door. The front door has a huge glass panel in it, so the dog can see through it. The chickens did not really have any problems. Their behavior did not really change much, except for them foraging further away from the barn and house. Suddenly in December, we woke up to all of them gone from the chicken coop, where they always returned. Now, I do think this may be a predator, but I still find it odd that we didn't find anything suggesting a predator took them. No feathers, no blood, no signs of entry. I also have experiences with something I cannot explain happening alongside the rest of the family. Before I go on, I will add that I'm a young woman, and this may have something to do with the activity. There is a video of the horses running from something, where in the video you can see what looks like mini lightnings going horizontally with little balls in front of them. It's brief, and it could possibly be from the electric fence. It was rainy as well, which could also do it. I sadly do not have access to the video, but if I do get it, I'll post it. My mother has seen red lights and orbs above the pastures, often seeing them up in the trees, inside the forest. My cousin did tell me once where she did see something dog-like close to the pasture, but she found something off about it. Now, this could just be fear or anxiety, and so on top of her and I having spent different amounts of time in the outdoors. Lastly, the local farmers refused to go into the woods. In Denmark, you have to keep your woods clean, and so on for public safety. The dog has apparently chased something unseen around the house, or rather run to every window barking and snarling at something unseen. As I'm currently seriously ill, I can't go on walks, so I've only learned about him pulling to try to either get into the woods or out onto a field. I have no updates about the cats. Some people have wondered about large predators, and I cannot rule them out. Fully out. But I've not had any wolves documented in my area since 2018, and no kills documented since 2017. We do not have bears, lynx, or wolverines. We do rarely have European badger and fox coming through the area, but they never settle, and the foxholes, which both badger and fox use, have seen no use, and most have collapsed. We do have stoats, but I highly doubt that they would cause this, as they are small enough to be prey of the cats. The humanoid in the woods? This was back in 2018, and the forest in question butts up onto the pens. So does the other woods as well, another pen. There's been one occasion where the humanoid was spotted. Me and my cousin were out walking along the gravel road during twilight. We were starting to return home to avoid being stuck in the dark, but it did get rather dark due to it being midwinter and the woods were off to our right. As we walked, we heard some branches snapping and the sound of a biped walking, or rather stalking. After not so long, we caught a quick glance at it, and we heard a groan-like sound. And all we really saw was a male-like thing, and after about 500 meters this thing got out of the woods after some birds flew out of it. It was over to the other woods on our left side. Something human-like came out of there. It did not have a face from what we saw, but long hair and patches on its head. It was nude and it went into the woods on our left. Those woods are a lot more open with little cover in them. It was the first and last we saw of it, but we did stop walking in that area for the rest of that winter. Now this could be a human, no doubt, but with how fast it moved in a dense forest with lots of bramble thickets, and in the thickest, gnarliest patch of woods with fallen trees, it did not add up alongside someone running around naked during midwinter, in a time where we still didn't know if that area was wolf-free. We did not get a complete up-close look at it, as we were about 30 meters away, which would explain why we couldn't see the facial features, but it just looked blank. The Dark Man in the Woods. This happened back in 2019, during summer solstice, at about 9:30 p.m.-ish. I will admit that I'm going off the lighting at the time. The day of summer solstice is the longest there. Well, after we had celebrated with our bonfire and burning a witch effigy, this is a tradition in my country, which in the old times were to drive off evil spirits and witches. And I was up in my room being on the first floor, or second, depending on where you live in the world. I could look down into the woods and pasture, and while I was just relaxing, looking out into the woods, I saw what looked like someone in there standing in the last of the fading light. I grabbed my binoculars and started looking at it, and I could see it was a young man. He looked fit and athletic, but he was jet black. I put the binoculars down to grab my phone to take a picture, and then he was just gone. I know, again, it could just be a person who'd painted himself and ran off, but again, seems odd. A possible connection. These two things have one common thread. Nude men. Now, the area I live in is about 14 kilometers away from a Neolithic Bronze Age settlement, and we do live near a marsh. Now, it has been suggested that once some part of the area has possibly had human and dog sacrifices. This may just be a coincidence, but it is something that I have pondered on. Ghost activity. Inside the house, we have experienced knocking on doors and the sound of people walking around the house at night. It's usually just one hard knock, and that's it. We've had shadows appear that should not be there. The Christmas of 2021, I caught what looks like a shadow with horns looking into the living room. It was caught at around 10 p.m. It was caught after the dog had exploded around the front door. We have had poltergeist-esque things happen, such as having pictures thrown from the walls, and had some drinking glasses explode out of nothing. They had no liquid in them. On top of that, we've experienced the sounds of something trashing the house, where the poor dog is covered in the bathroom. We've heard growls that were not the dog, as he was by my mother. My mother has experienced touching, apparitions, and before-mentioned orbs and sounds. We have all had the experience of having a blurry vision of each of us walk by out of the kitchen. As of writing this, a shadow has suddenly appeared on the table beside me, and when I turned around, nothing was there. We also once saw the hay move as something unseen moved through it, leaving indents. The goat skull. So, around mid-October 2019, as we were going to get the horses in, we saw at the edge of our property something that had been hung up in a tree, and as we got closer, we could tell it was a partially decomposed goat's head. I'd say skull, as it was mainly that, but some flesh and other viscera were still on it. We kept on going to quickly get the horses in, who were freaking out, most likely due to the smell. We returned to remove the head from the tree, but when we got back, it was gone. But some of the fresh blood remained, which further confuses me, due to there being no chance that the head or skull had left it, as the poor thing had been dead for quite a while. Sudden sabotage. So around May last year, we started having things get fiddled with, such as a wheelbarrow losing one of its wheels. Tools went missing, so we put up trail cams, and somehow, whoever or whatever this is found them and tampered with them. Sometimes tearing them down and placing objects in front of them. And then, we got a quick picture of something male looking just a shoulder, a nude shoulder, like the thing we've seen. One morning my mother got up as per usual, and then she went out to start the car. She found that the side mirror glass had been removed and a tire popped. After all this, things stopped, and it would seem we've had a biped problem with someone or something having caused mischief for about 5 months. Foul odors. We've all had sudden spots in the house where sudden smells of decay have popped up. Alongside those smells followed us around outside and then disappeared like they were never there. We've even gone back to see where the smell came from, and we could not find it again. The cats have all been very hostile of the smells, hissing, growling at it, staying in front of us like they've been trying to protect us. Canids. We have spotted canid-like things for a long time. Possibly some wolves or something else sometimes. My cousin did tell me that once on her way home from me, on foot during the night, she saw a dog-human thing. Or more accurately, upright, walking wolf thing with a robe. She did ask me to sketch it for her, and I did. Now, she saw it around the marsh, where it just stood looking at her with red eyes. This is definitely one of those harder to explain things to me, as I was not there, but I also did not know what to make of it, because I do not know of anything that could trick the mind like that. That isn't an hallucination. We once saw some kind of large canid things running at unnatural speeds through the pastures at night. Now again, possibly, and hopefully, most likely wolves. 2. So I lived in upstate New York, studying for about 4 years at university. And over the course of those 4 years, I had a few select experiences which really stood out to me. I'm still not entirely sure if they're paranormal or just my mind playing tricks on me, but the sense of unease and dread I get when thinking about those instances leads me to believe otherwise. So please let me know what you think. Please ask any questions and I'll try my best to answer. For some context, the area is almost entirely surrounded by forest or farmland and is very rural. There are plenty of abandoned structures around the area, such as stone foundations of houses left over in the forest. It also gets very dark. I was doing a lot of field ecology at the time, so it's not like I'm not accustomed to things going bump in the night, and would actually spend most of my time alone outside. These are the 2 occurrences which stood out the most. The first occurrence was when I moved there. It was late summer. A friend and I were walking to a dorm where everyone was gathered. But to get there are 2 paths. One goes along the main road, and the other takes a dirt back road past a sports field, which are surrounded by some pretty thick forest on 3 sides. There are some very light clouds far off in the distance. The sky is basically completely clear, other than that, and stars are quite visible. All of the lights are off. As we're halfway past, we see a light light up the sky for a split second, almost yellow or green. We think it's lightning at first, and wait for the thunder to come. It doesn't. That's when we noticed a low, whirring noise, but I dismissed it as the sound of the sewage treatment plant. We slowly keep making our way, and almost 30 seconds later the light happens again, but this time we notice it's coming from behind the tree line, on one side of the field. No strike of lightning as we'd expect, and no thunder once again. At that point, my friend and I look at each other and start booking it to the dorm. When we get there, we're a bit frazzled and tell our friends what happened. They laugh it off. I was looking out the window as they're making fun of us for getting freaked out. Then it happens again, further off in the distance. A few others in the group see it and go silent. After that, we keep our eyes on the windows, letting out a few nervous laughs. And it happened a few more times, but with more time in between. By the time we went home, it had stopped. A few days down the line, I was walking around and realized that the sewage treatment plant had been on a completely different side of the campus. Nowhere near where we had been. The whirring noise was absent when I would walk past the same area we had seen the light in. The second occurrence happened a few years later, last winter. It was towards the end of winter and was still cold out, and I was walking back from my friend's back to mine, through a slightly wooded area where the path was lit by a faint string of lights. Off in the distance, I hear some sort of groan or yelp, and stop to listen for a second, dismissing it at first, and keep walking down the path. Then I hear something groan and scream out for help. Almost a female voice, but I can't quite make it out. It didn't sound slurred like someone was drunk or something, but just difficult to parse. It was close this time, but I couldn't quite tell what direction it was coming from either. It crossed my mind to try to walk over to see if someone needed help, but just as that thought passed, it was like a stone dropped in my stomach. I realized that there was no other sound, just the cold wind and those groans. The sense of dread I had from hearing that made me so uneasy that I was almost frozen for a minute, continuing to listen. Whatever came over me, I snapped out of it and continued to walk down the path, looking out on all sides to hear whether I could spot any figures. I thought that I would at least be able to see them if the sounds were so close. Nothing except those calls. I hope someone wasn't actually calling out for help, but the unease that I felt in that moment isn't something I feel often, and shouldn't have been ignored. Locked myself inside my room after that, the windows of which face the same woods. The calls had stopped by then. Didn't hear of anything bad happening to someone the next morning, which only further makes me think that I had bumped into something out of the ordinary the night before. 3. I have never asked anyone about it, or discussed it with anyone, but there have been a few odd situations in my life I will now describe, in hopes that someone here can maybe help explain this. I come from a deeply religious family. We used to joke about living in a haunted house because from time to time the TV or radio would turn on its own. But the house was built about 50 years ago by my grandfather, and it doesn't really have any history. Well, besides that there were 3 situations that happened to me that I can't explain, and only one of them happened in our house. Oddly enough, I just realized that they all involved my sister, who is 3 years younger than me. Firstly, I was maybe 10 years old. My family went to visit our grandparents on the countryside. Me and my sister were upstairs playing with something on the blanket, and we realized that the door handle is moving. We thought that our older cousins were pranking us, so we started to call them, but nobody answered. At first, the door handles were just moving up and down, slowly, but after some time the door started to open a little. It started to get scary because we couldn't see anyone on the other side of the door, but we still thought that maybe they're pranking us, using a rope or something like that. Well, the door then opened widely, to the end, and nobody was there. The motion of the door was very controlled. The door handle was being slowly pressed. Then the door would open. It stayed like this for a while, and then started closing slowly with the door handles still down. Then, after the door gently closed themselves, and the door handle would slowly go up until it was finished. It happened a few times and stopped. Secondly, my parents' dream was to take their kids on the pilgrimage that they started dating on. So when I was 17, they took us. We didn't want to go, but there was no other option. The first day, we slept in some stranger's house in the living room on the floor. Our family of 6 and some other strangers on the couch in the same room. My younger sisters slept on my left. The day before that, there was a Conjuring premiere that I saw with my friends, so you can imagine my fear when I woke up at like 2:55 a.m. In the movie, everything goes down at 3:07 a.m. So I started to hear every sound the house makes more loudly. After some time, my sister, who often talks in her sleep, got halfway up, sat on the floor, turned to me, looked me in the eye and told me, "Are you going to let me in or not?" I remember that without a doubt it wasn't her voice. It was strong and deep. She said it loudly. She kept on looking at me like she was waiting for a response. After a while, she murmured something inaudible and went back to sleep. I nearly died of fear, but just prayed until I fell asleep. I wasn't really religious then, but what else could I do? Thirdly, I was 19, staying up late, learning for an exam in my room. My room is at the end of the small corridor. On the other end of the corridor, there are stairs. We're upstairs. Between the stairs and the corridor is the door to my younger sister's room. On the floor under us lives our grandmother. So it's like 11 p.m. I'm learning while listening to music, and I notice that the light on the stairs went on. Nothing unusual. Probably just Grandma going to the bathroom. But I take the headphones off, just to know if everything is okay. I don't hear anyone walking downstairs. The light goes off. The light switch is downstairs. At this point, I'm more curious than scared. I call for my grandma to check if everything is all right. Nobody answered. Then the light turned on, and I heard the footsteps on the stairs. Just a few, probably someone took like 3 steps. Then the light turned off. At this moment, it appears that someone is standing in the dark on the stairs. After a while, the light turns on, and I hear like 6 steps, but they come from the bottom of the stairs. So nobody took 3 steps back, and someone took 6 steps from the beginning. At this point, I'm scared. I asked if anybody is here. Somebody ran 6 steps back, but the light stayed on. I'm looking through my door at the end of the corridor and the top of the stairs. Suddenly, the light goes off and someone is running all the way to the corridor, but I don't see anyone. I close my door, scared like shit. But nothing more happens. The scary thing is that after years of living next to those stairs, every one of us could tell by the sound of the footsteps 100% accurately who is going up or down. And I didn't recognize those footsteps. Later I called my mum, who happened not to be asleep yet. She often reads or prays late and goes to bed later. I told them what happened. She took holy water and did some prayers on the stairs. Well, I'm not religious for quite some years now, but I'm still open-minded, partly because of these 3 incidents that I certainly know what happened and were real, and I can't wrap my head around them. I never really got into them, just used to tell them to my friends or someone when the mood was right and mysterious. But I'm really curious if anyone can say anything about it. There's no trauma related to our family. We all get along and are quite happy with good relations between us. Thank you all for listening. 4. For context, this is not the first time something in the realm of weird or paranormal has happened to me. But otherwise, I'm not into paranormal stuff or actively trying to see things. I had a handful of experiences, but really spaced out over the years. So, I'm a 23-year-old female, and I was hanging out in my apartment, which I've been renting for a year now. My girlfriend was cooking in the kitchen and needed me to bring something from the other room, so I went. When I came back to the kitchen, my girlfriend was saying stuff to me. but I was not really able to concentrate because right off the bat, something felt weird and different in the room. I was trying to figure out what. The air felt more dense, like there were actually 3 people in the room instead of 2. At this moment, I was super aware of my body and felt like a presence was on my right side. I cannot explain how the feeling felt, but I could feel some energy emanating from somewhere between myself and the wall of the kitchen, a 1-meter gap. I tried to stay still and really feel the room, and there was no doubt in my mind something was off. So now this is where I think I might be tripping. Maybe if, instead of trying to follow my intuition, if I tried to snap out of it and forget the whole deal, I wouldn't have seen anything. But I swear to God, I looked at my right back side while the feeling dawned on me that there was definitely someone, and I fucking saw a girl standing there. Now here's how it went. I rotated my head and my body, and while I was making that movement, I saw her in my peripheral of my right eye. I didn't see a full 100% sharp image, but I saw enough to fill in the gaps in my head. I saw how tall she was. I saw that she was a girl no older than 12. I kind of saw her face, and she wasn't even scary. I paid more attention to her upper torso and face area, but I also remember seeing some folds of clothes on the lower part that quickly disappeared. All these details I could see in a fraction of a second, because as soon as I focused my sight on this figure, it kinda disappeared. It was like looking through a glass at just the correct angle. This is not to say she went away. The corporeal feeling from before was still there and stronger than ever now. All of this that I'm describing happened in the span of 2 or 3 minutes from the moment I entered the room until I saw that figure there. All through that time, I had chills down my spine, and I was so scared, but in a weird way. I knew there was no danger, but it felt spooky. My girlfriend didn't notice a thing. I was pale and so shook at seeing that girl there, I could barely keep it together, but for some reason, I thought that I should act like nothing happened, so I kept helping my girlfriend with dinner. Like I don't know, but telling her about the whole thing right then and there felt wrong. It took like 20 minutes for me to get from extremely scared to normal. I told her what I saw this morning, and she brushed me off and laughed. I'm honestly really upset about the whole episode, and I don't know what to make about it. On one hand, I'm wondering if this was a one-time thing, or if there's any chance it will happen again. If so, how do I make it not happen again? Also, could this be real or am I tripping? I've lived in this apartment for a year, and though the vibe is kinda off, I've never seen anything like this. I wonder if maybe I just imagined the whole thing. How does one deal with this stuff? Anyways, I appreciate any insight you might have, and any advice as well. I can provide more info if needed. Thanks. 5. First off, you don't have to believe anything I say, but I think this place is probably the best to go with it. So I'm like a very spiritual person. I'm a pagan and actively practice the art of witchcraft. I do not see things, but I talked many times to so-called ghosts. I do find this disrespectful. Lots of people in the afterlife don't really want to realize it. I will now just go on about a couple of experiences I had, and I guess you can judge. The first time I remember feeling something was actually on unclaimed land, full of grass, and it was just instant sadness. I do know now that there were a lot of animals shot because a farmer in my village couldn't afford it all anymore. The second time I was sitting in my room doing my Friday ritual for the goddess I worship. I light a specific candle, where no wind was or anything. I was also sitting on my bed, and was like far away from it. It just slowly turned itself out multiple times. I just said something like, "I'm not doing this right now, please stop and mess with someone else." Because I was already stressed that day. The next time I lighted, it was okay, and my evening just continued normal. When I wanted to sleep, I felt someone, or I don't know, something, sit in my bed. I do have a dog, but he was laying in my arm. I just assumed it was trying to calm me down a bit from earlier. I also did not feel bad or anything, just nice. I said sorry after and went to sleep. Another time, a friend told me that she had a ghost in her room, and she is freaked out by it. So I offered a seance. I didn't do anything like that before, so it was kind of freaky for me too. We did it in the classic way with just one candle. For those who don't know, you can talk with spirits through flames, and this one really wanted to talk to us. We figured out it was an old man that came to her through the mirror portal she had. He was friendly and sad. We asked him just not to show him to us, and then ended it. This is the most recent one. The reason why I actually started writing this. I watch a lot of horror videos, and with that I watch Sam and Colby. Their videos are very entertaining, and I only feel bad vibes with a few. But tonight I watched this one video with the real Conjuring house. The first one. And in that moment they walked in the basement alone. I just felt my heart racing. Not in a scary way, but in a way it would just explode. My whole body started heating up and my breathing got heavier. I thought I would have a panic attack, but these feel different from this. It was really, really strong bad energy, and I just couldn't handle that. I don't know how Amanda, the woman in the video is also spiritual, could stay there for so long, and I basically collapsed just by watching. Bless you all. Stay safe. And have the universe on your side. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to Paranormal Stories, episode 322. And thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use their stories in this video. Please do bonk the like button before you go, thank you kindly. Okay, now before I go, I'm going to move on to Hellfreezer's question of the day. And today's question is... And this one comes to us thanks to one of my moderators, Ino, aka Darth Ino. And that is... If you could bring back one show, animated or otherwise from childhood, what would it be? That's a really easy one for me. If you remember the old X-Men cartoon, well, they are bringing that back, so that's me happy. I don't know when it launches, but apparently they're reviving it, I believe with the original cast. And I look very much forward to seeing that. But what are yours? Those shows you watched when you were a kid, that kind of fires that sense of nostalgia in you, that you'd like to see them bring back. Please do pop your answers in a comment below. And with that, I'm going to head off for now. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourself.